I lost my job, and my sister threw a party, mocking me, while my family ignored everything I'd done for them. When her fake promotion got exposed, and my parents asked for help, I left them on hold. It was a Wednesday morning when my whole world got downgraded to a cardboard box. I, Liam, 32 male, had been at the company for 5 years. Compliance, not the sexy part of finance, not the guys on magazine covers talking about vision and innovation. I was the guy making sure other people didn't tank the ship. I caught errors, flagged shady transactions, and kept us from eating millions in fines. I wasn't flashy, but I was reliable. Everyone knew that. So when the CFO walked into my office, shut the door, and gave me that fake serious but kind look, I knew it wasn't good. Not personal, he said, like those words meant anything. We're restructuring. Your role's been consolidated. Consolidated like I was a duplicate file on someone's desktop. I didn't argue, didn't beg, just nodded, collected the little crap from my desk and put it in the box they'd already left for me. That stung the most. The box was ready before the conversation even happened, like they'd practiced this. Walking out was worse than the meeting. People saw me carrying the box. Some looked down at their screens like suddenly they had the most important email of their life. One guy gave me that pity half smile like he wanted to say something but couldn't risk being next. It was like I'd caught a disease and they didn't want to get infected. By the time I got home, I was numb. Sat on my couch with the box at my feet. Opened my laptop out of habit. My first instinct wasn't even to breathe. It was to go to LinkedIn and flip my status to open to work like some desperate ad. Hey everyone, slightly used compliance officer here. Low mileage available immediately. I hated myself for doing it, but that's the game. If you're not advertising, you're invisible. The job boards were a joke. Half of them wanted entry level with 5 years experience. Others paid peanuts. A few were flat-out scams that looked like they were written by bots. I clicked easy apply on a bunch anyway. That's what it felt like. A rat pushing a lever for pellets hoping one would drop. Every so often I'd scroll my feed and see some guy I used to work with posting. Excited to announce my promotion, or grateful for the opportunity to lead. The kind of corporate flex that looks fake but gets 200 likes. And here I was refreshing my inbox for nothing. What made it worse wasn't the job market. It was the silence. Not one text, not one call. My parents didn't check in. My sister Tiffany, 28 female, didn't either. You'd think if you suddenly lost your job after years of grinding, the people closest to you would at least pretend to care. Instead, nothing. Phone stayed cold. And maybe that was the part that hit hardest. I could stomach a layoff. Companies chew people up all the time. But when the people who are supposed to be in your corner vanish the second you slip, that's a different kind of gut punch. I tried not to spiral, so I did what I always do. Made lists, companies I'd apply to, recruiters to email certifications I could brush up on. I wasn't about to sit there crying into the box of crap from my desk. But every time I looked at my phone screen lighting up, it was just junk. Spam calls, recruiter blasts, nothing from the people that mattered. There was this bitterness creeping in. Not like rage yet, more like slow poison. Sitting there on my couch laptop on my knees, I thought, funny when you're doing well, everyone's proud to claim you. The second you slip, you're basically invisible. I closed the laptop around midnight after blasting out another round of resumes. My apartment was quiet, too quiet, and the only sound was the hum of the fridge. I grabbed something cold, sat back down, and stared at my phone again. Still no calls. That was when it hit me. It wasn't that they didn't know, it was that they didn't care. And that realization hurt more than the pink slip. At least the company had the decency to look me in the eye and say it wasn't personal. My family didn't even bother to say anything at all. So I told myself something right then. I wasn't going to sit here and be the guy they forgot about. If nobody was going to back me up, fine. I'd back myself up. I'd find a way forward. And when the truth eventually showed itself, because in compliance it always does, I wanted to be ready. I thought back to college. My sister, the golden child, got into a private school she couldn't really afford. My parents made a big deal about how proud they were. But when tuition bills hit, they came up short. Who stepped in? Me. I was barely out of high school, juggling part-time jobs. But I still threw in a chunk of my savings to cover what scholarships didn't. Nobody forced me to. I did it because that's what family's supposed to do. Then there were the times after, like when Dad got behind on the mortgage one winter. I just started full-time at my first compliance job and my paychecks weren't huge, but I cut him a check without a second thought. Or the electric bill that was about to get shut off, or the car repair my sister suddenly couldn't cover. It was always me. Always the steady one bailing them out while she was showered with praise for being driven and gifted. And now, crickets. The minute I'm the one who could use a hand, not even money, just a little support. They're nowhere. It wasn't even about the cash. I wasn't asking for them to pay my rent. I just wanted a simple acknowledgement that losing a job sucks and that maybe I wasn't alone in it. But apparently I was. 2 weeks of that cold shoulder went by before I got something in the mail. At first I thought it was junk, plain white envelope, cheap paper. My name scribbled on the front in my sister's handwriting. I opened it and almost laughed. Inside was a formal invitation she clearly made on her laptop with some free template. Big fancy font that didn't even line up properly. You are invited to celebrate the promotion of Tiffany to senior associate. At the bottom in bold it said party at Mom and Dad's Saturday 7 p.m. That was it. No RSVP card, no details. Just her trying to make herself sound important. The kicker, the way she addressed it, just my name. No bring a guest, no +1, just me. Like she wanted to make sure I walked in there alone. I sat there staring at it, shaking my head. A promotion party at my parents' house. Not a banquet hall, not some high-end venue, just our cramped dining room dressed up like it was hosting royalty. Classic move. I could already picture it. My mom bragging to relatives about her daughter's big achievement. My dad puffing out his chest, my sister soaking it all in, and me, the unemployed brother, sitting at the end of the table like an afterthought. I tossed it on the table. My best friend Ryan dropped by that night. He took one look at the card and said, "You're not seriously going, right?" "Why not?" I asked, even though I already knew what he meant. "Because they don't want you there. That card's not an invitation. It's a warning. You're walking into enemy territory." I laughed, but he wasn't wrong. Still, something inside me tightened when I looked at that embossed seal. "Maybe I'll go anyway," I said. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "To clap for her to sit in the corner while they pass champagne around and ignore you." "I'm not going to clap," I said. "I just want to see. Remind her that I exist. Remind them I exist." Truth was, I didn't even know what I wanted out of it. Closure, payback, or maybe just to stop feeling like a ghost in my own family. The rest of the week dragged. Rejections piled up in my inbox. Every "we've decided to move forward with other candidates" felt like a punch. And in between those, my sister kept posting selfies with captions like "grateful for new opportunities." Her friends commented things like, "So proud of you and future CEO right here." I wanted to roll my eyes so hard they'd get stuck. By Friday, the invite was still sitting on my counter, unopened again after I'd shoved it back in the envelope. Ryan's words kept echoing. Enemy territory. He wasn't wrong, but I couldn't shake the itch to go anyway. Not to clap, not to congratulate, but to stand there and make sure they remembered I existed. They thought I was invisible. Fine. Then I'd show up in the flesh and force them to look me in the eye. Part of me wanted to rip the invitation in half and be done with it. But the other part, the side of me that hated being dismissed, that couldn't stand being written off, wanted to walk in there and face it head on. So I pressed the crease on that invitation flat, folded it neatly, and slid it back into the envelope. I was going not to celebrate her, not to clap along, just to watch, and maybe, just maybe, to remind them that they couldn't write me off forever. Saturday came fast. It felt weird pulling into the same driveway I'd once helped save from foreclosure. When I walked in, the smell of food hit me. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the works. My mom had clearly gone all out. The dining table was covered in a lace tablecloth, candles lit, way more effort than she ever put in for my birthdays. And there she was, bustling around, smiling like a politician at a rally. "Look who finally made it," she said, giving me a quick hug before darting back to the kitchen. Not "how are you?" Not "how are you holding up?" Just a throwaway line like I was late to the show. My dad was in the living room laughing too loudly at one of my sister's stories. She was holding court in front of a mix of relatives and a couple family friends, glass of soda in hand, grinning like she'd just been sworn into office. The second I stepped through the doorway, her eyes flicked over me and she smirked. "Oh, you actually came," she said. "Didn't think you'd want to, hang around all this success." I clenched my jaw but kept quiet. Not yet. Then I spotted where they'd put me. The main dining table was set perfectly. Polished chairs, plates, folded napkins, everything looking formal. And then off to the side was the kids' table. Plastic folding chairs, paper plates, cheap party favors. At the end of it sat my spot, marked with a piece of printer paper taped to the cloth. In thick marker it read, "Jobless and hopeless." The laughter came instantly. My mom chuckled like it was some light-hearted family joke, and my dad smirked, shaking his head like he couldn't believe how clever it was. My sister straight up burst out laughing. "Oh, come on. It's funny," she said, waving her hand. "Lighten up." I just stood there staring at it. My pulse was pounding in my ears. "You serious?" I finally asked. "You actually wrote that? It's just a joke," my dad said. "Don't be so sensitive. We know you're between things." "Yeah," my sister chimed in. "Besides, it's kind of accurate." "Isn't it?" She said it with that smug grin, like she'd scored a debate point. I walked over, pulled the tag off the table, and held it up. "You think this is funny? Celebrating in the house I helped save from foreclosure? Eating off plates I probably paid for back when you couldn't keep the lights on?" That killed the laughter fast. My mom froze, spatula still in her hand. My dad's smile dropped. My sister blinked, suddenly unsure of herself. "Don't act like I'm crazy," I said, voice steady. "You remember when the mortgage was overdue and the bank was calling every week? Who wrote the check? Me. When your scholarships didn't cover your tuition, who filled the gap? Me. You wouldn't even have that job if I hadn't helped you stay in school." Silence. The only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. Now I lose my job and suddenly I'm unemployed and unwanted. I shook the tag in my hand. "That's what I am to you." My sister tried to laugh it off. "Okay. Guess don't take it so seriously. It was just what I cut her off. Just you pretending you pulled yourself up by your own genius, just you acting like none of us ever helped you along the way. You really think it's funny to humiliate me in front of relatives and family friends? People who don't even know the half of what I've done for this family." Her face turned red, but she tried to shrug it off. "It was just a joke. Don't make it bigger than it is." "Bigger than it is?" I shook my head, holding up the tag so everyone could see. "We're sitting here in the house I helped keep from being repossessed. You're standing here with a job you wouldn't even have if I hadn't chipped in for your tuition. And I'm the punchline. I'm the unemployed and unwanted one." The room went dead quiet. An aunt glanced at her plate. One of my mom's friends cleared her throat awkwardly. Nobody laughed this time. My mom rushed in, voice sharp. "Don't ruin this night. Your sister has worked hard and deserves recognition." I let out a short laugh. Short, not because it was funny, but because of how typical it was. Worked hard. I know all about hard work. I pulled 12-hour days, weekends, holidays, caught fraud cases that saved my company millions. Nobody here threw me a dinner. Nobody here even said thank you. But the second I'm down, I get this. I waved the tag. My dad's jaw tightened. "You've always been bitter. That's your problem. Instead of being happy for your sister, you—" "No." I cut him off. "My problem is I've always kept my mouth shut. I paid the bills, I filled the gaps, I made sure this family didn't sink. And what did I get in return? Nothing but silence. Well, not anymore." I dropped the tag on the table and pulled out one of the real chairs. Not the folding one they set up for me. Nobody told me to move. Nobody dared. They just stared stunned like they'd seen someone they didn't recognize take a seat. The rest of the meal was tense. My sister tried to make her little speech about being proud of herself, but her voice wobbled. Relatives avoided eye contact. My parents picked at their food, saying nothing. I didn't clap. I didn't smile. I just sat there steady, eating like I belonged because I did. For the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking. After that dinner, something shifted in me. I went home still pissed, but also sharper, like I'd been slapped awake. They wanted to paint me as the weak one, the failure, the extra chair at the end of the table. Fine, but I wasn't staying in that role. The next morning, I opened my laptop and stopped half-witted my job search. Instead of sending out desperate, easy apply resumes, I treated it like a project. I built a spreadsheet, tracked openings, made notes on recruiters, even reached back to old contacts I hadn't spoken to in years. Every rejection I got, I logged and moved on. It stopped feeling like a death sentence and more like a numbers game. To pay the bills, I picked up freelance compliance gigs. Not glamorous, but work is work. Startups always need someone to comb through their paperwork or make sure their filings don't get them fined. Half of them didn't even know what they were doing. So I'd log on at night, clean up their mess, and pocket enough to keep rent paid. It wasn't the kind of job you brag about, but it was mine. And slowly, the sting of jobless started to wear off. Then it happened. A recruiter reached out with a message that felt different. Not the usual copy-paste garbage. She mentioned specifics for my resume projects I'd done, the fraud cases I'd caught. "We're looking for someone with your exact background," she wrote. I scrolled down to see the company name and froze. Vantage Systems. My sister's company. I stared at the screen wondering if this was some kind of prank. But no, the recruiter was real, the role was real, and it was for a completely different department than hers. Operations, not whatever corner she was fumbling around in. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me didn't want to touch anything connected to her. Why give them more ammunition? Why risk running into her and letting her spin another story at my expense? But another part of me, the bigger part, liked the idea of walking into her world on my own terms. Not as her brother, not as some forgotten relative, but as someone they actually wanted. So I went through the process. Interviews, case studies, reference checks. I didn't tell a soul, not even Ryan. I kept freelancing while juggling interview prep, building out examples of my past work like a maniac. And when the offer came through, I just sat there staring at it. Full-time benefits salary that was higher than my last job. I accepted without hesitation. Walking into that building on my first day felt surreal. The logo I'd seen on my sister's LinkedIn posts, the one she plastered everywhere like it was a crown. Now it was on the badge clipped to my shirt. The lobby was busy, people buzzing around, and nobody there looked at me like the unemployed brother. I was just another hire, another professional brought in because they needed what I could do, and that's how I wanted to keep it. At work, I didn't mention my family. I didn't drop my sister's name. I kept my head down, did my job, and let the results speak for themselves. When coworkers asked where I'd come from, I gave the short version. Compliance background. Did some freelance recently. Now here, that was it. No soba story, no family drama. The work itself was challenging in a good way. Cleaning up processes, tightening reporting, making things efficient, stuff I was built for. My manager noticed fast. Within a month, I was running meetings, drafting reports that actually got attention. After months of feeling disposable, it was like oxygen. Meanwhile, at home, my family kept acting like nothing had changed. They still saw me as between jobs, the quiet one floating around. My sister posted about her promotion constantly, pictures of her in blazers, captions about leadership opportunities. My parents ate it up, commenting things like, "So proud of you," on every post. Not one of them asked me what I was up to, which was fine. The less they knew, the better. The funny part, at first, her name barely came up. She was just background noise in another department. But as the weeks went on, the cracks started showing. Little jokes, nicknames, complaints that floated around. It turned out people did talk about her, just not in the way she'd want. Keeping the secret felt almost fun. Every time my mom hinted at me needing to get serious about my future, I bit my tongue. Every time my sister bragged in the family group chat, I smiled to myself, knowing I walked through the same doors she did every morning, except I actually belonged there. I wasn't just rebuilding anymore. I was climbing quietly, carefully in the one place they thought I'd never fit. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Control. Every day at the office sharpened that feeling. I came in early, stayed focused, and slowly built a reputation as the guy who got things done. Not the loudest in the room, not the one chasing recognition, just solid. And people noticed. My manager started trusting me with bigger reports, the kind that actually went upstairs. Coworkers leaned on me to check their work because they knew I'd spot mistakes. One process I cleaned up cut error rates by almost 20% in a single quarter. Not glamorous, but enough that higher-ups noticed. Quiet results that spoke louder than titles. It was the kind of respect that didn't need clapping or fake invitations. It showed itself in the quiet nods and the "glad you're on this project." One afternoon, I was sitting in the break room with a couple guys from my team. We were eating overpriced sandwiches and half joking about the coffee machine being older than the building when someone mentioned a name that made me pause. "Did you hear about Tiffany messing up that client file?" one of them said, shaking his head. Total disaster. I kept my face neutral, like the name meant nothing to me. "Who's that?" I asked casually, taking a bite of my sandwich. "She's an admin support over on the strategy side," he said. "Supposed to be doing intake and reports, but man, she's always behind. People have to redo half her stuff." Another coworker snorted. "Lowest rank in that department and still acts like she's on top. Can't tell if it's overconfidence or just cluelessness." I sipped my coffee, slowly hiding the smirk that threatened to break through. So this was the big promotion. Senior associate, funny. Because to everyone here, she was basically the office joke. I didn't push it right away. I let the conversation drift back to work. But inside, I was turning it over. Everything suddenly made sense. The homemade invitation, the family dinner at my parents' house instead of anything official. The way she never mentioned specific details about her role online. She'd spun a story, and they'd all swallowed it whole. A few days later, I confirmed it without even trying. I was in the elevator with a project coordinator from her department. The kind of person who somehow knew everybody's business, the type that always had a story to tell while the doors closed. We got to chatting about projects, and I casually asked, "Who handles compliance checks on the strategy side?" She laughed, shaking her head. "Nobody, really. That team's a mess. Half the time we have to clean up their reports before they get upstairs. They've got Tiffany down there, but she's barely hanging on. People grumble about it constantly. I even heard her managers considering letting her go if things don't improve." Barely hanging on, she kept talking, rattling off a couple of mistakes Tiffany had made. Wrong numbers in a client file, missing attachments, stuff that caused extra work for everyone else. It wasn't malicious gossip either, more like exasperation from someone tired of babysitting. By the time the elevator dinged at my floor, I didn't even need her to say more. The picture was clear. I walked back to my desk and sat there letting it sink in. My sister, the one my parents threw a fake promotion party for, the one who had a room full of relatives and friends laughing at me with a jobless and hopeless tag, was on the verge of losing her job. And nobody in my family had a clue. The irony was almost too perfect. I didn't rush to tell anyone. I didn't text Ryan, didn't blow up at my parents, didn't confront her. I just kept working, head down, stacking wins while she stacked mistakes. Every time she posted some self-congratulatory caption online, I scrolled past and smiled to myself, knowing the truth. The best part, my position kept rising while hers kept sinking. I was pulled into a project that put me in front of higher-ups, the kind of meeting where your name gets remembered. Meanwhile, I'd overhear whispers about her missing deadlines or sending the wrong files or not quite fitting the role. It was almost surreal. At home, I was still the quiet one, the one nobody asked about. In my parents' eyes, I was floating. In reality, I was sitting in the same building as their golden child, outperforming her at every level, and they didn't even know it. The more I thought about that, the more deliberate I became. I didn't flaunt anything, didn't post updates online. I wanted the reveal to happen naturally, like pulling a sheet off something they thought they understood, only to find out the picture underneath was completely different. Weeks rolled by and the cracks in her image got bigger. A guy from it joked that her team's nickname for her was Printer Jam because she slowed everything down. Another person muttered that she only still had a desk because her manager hated paperwork. And me, I got invited to sit in on a leadership roundtable, not to talk, just to listen and take notes. But it was a room most people in my department would have killed to be in. Sitting there, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something solid, something real. On the ride home that night, I thought back to that dinner. The laughter, the cheap folding chair, the tag with jobless and hopeless scribbled across it. At the time, it felt like the bottom, like that was who I was to them permanently. But now, knowing what I knew about her, it didn't sting the same way because the truth was clear. She wasn't the star they thought she was. She wasn't climbing, she was dangling by a thread, and when the thread finally snapped, I'd be right there. Not to save her, not to gloat, but to watch them all realize they'd backed the wrong horse. And for once, I didn't feel like the unwanted one. I felt like the one holding the cards. Thanksgiving came faster than I expected. Mom called 3 times in the week leading up to it, reminding me to be on time like I was still 12 years old. I almost didn't go, but Ryan pushed me. "You've been keeping this in too long," he said. "It's time." He was right. So I showed up. The house smelled like turkey and pie. The TV was blasting football, and every relative in a 50-me radius seemed crammed into the dining room. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even a couple of my parents' friends. The golden child was already there, of course. My sister stood near the head of the table, glass in hand, looking like she owned the night. "Ah, there he is," Dad announced when I walked in, clapping his hands. "The Wanderer returns. Still figuring things out, son?" The chuckles from a few relatives made my jaw tighten, but I kept walking. My sister smirked, brushing invisible lint off her sleeve. "Don't worry, Dad. Not everyone can land promotions like me. Some of us just take longer to find their path." The table laughed with her. I sat down at the far end, nodding politely. My plate had the smallest portions. No surprise there. Dinner kicked off, and as soon as the turkey was carved, the bragging began. Mom raised her glass. "We are so proud of Tiffany, senior associate at such a young age. Vantage Systems must really see her potential." Relatives clapped. A cousin asked her how she handles all that responsibility. She launched into a ramble about managing deliverables and strategic oversight. Buzzwords strung together like beads. People nodded along, eating it up. Meanwhile, Dad kept tossing digs my way. "Maybe your brother will take notes tonight, huh? Learn how to make something of himself." I smiled faintly. Oh, I'm taking notes. By the time pie hit the table, my sister was glowing, bragging about how she was leading projects and setting the standard. My parents beamed with pride, soaking it up. Finally, my aunt turned to me. And what about you, dear? Finding any luck yet? The whole table quieted, waiting for me to squirm. My sister leaned back in her chair, smirking like she'd already won. I set down my fork. Actually, yeah. I've been working at Vantage Systems. The reaction was immediate. Forks paused midair. A few relatives blinked. My dad frowned. Wait, what? I nodded. Got hired a weeks ago. Different department operations. My sister laughed too quickly. You Advantage, please? I'd know if you were there. Not necessarily, I said calmly. It's a big company. Different floor, different chain of command. I don't sit at the kids' table there. The room shifted. A couple cousins snickered. My mom cleared her throat. Well, isn't that something, but surely not at the same level as your sister? That's the funny part, I interrupted. I actually report higher up. My work feeds into leadership directly. They trust me with projects that matter. I looked around the table, letting it sink in. Meanwhile, I keep hearing stories about my sister struggling with deadlines, turning in files people have to redo. Not exactly the image of a senior associate. The silence was deafening. My sister's face went red. That's not true, she snapped. They gave me more responsibilities. Really, I leaned forward steady because everyone at the office knows you're still entry. Level support. No promotion, no projects, just barely hanging on. Gasps around the table. One of Mom's friends put down her fork. My aunt muttered, "Oh my," under her breath. Dad's voice cracked the silence. What are you saying? I'm saying, I said calm as ever, that while you've been parading her around as the family star, she's been lying to all of you. The dinner you threw the promotion invite she made, none of it was real. I hear about her at work. I hear the truth, and it's ugly. My sister slammed her fork down. You're just jealous. You can't stand that I'm the one they celebrate. Celebrate what? Celebrate. I shot back. A title you don't have, tasks you can't handle. You wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone with that little jobless and hopeless stunt. But guess what? I'm the one moving up. I'm the one actually respected at that company. You're one step from being fired, and you know it. The room went dead quiet again. Relatives stared down at their plates, shifting uncomfortably. Mom's face was pale. Dad looked like someone had hit him with a shovel. Finally, he croaked, "Is this true?" My sister opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She glanced around, desperate for backup, but no one saved her. I sat back, finished my pie, and let the silence hang. Not the folding chair this time, not the printer paper name tag. A real seat at the real table. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the ghost. I was the one who flipped it. That Thanksgiving dinner ended with everyone picking at their food and awkward silence. Nobody rushed to brag about my sister anymore. Nobody asked me condescending questions. The only sounds were clinking forks and half-hearted attempts at small talk. When dessert wrapped up, I grabbed my coat and left without waiting for the goodbyes. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not just relief, but power. They couldn't unhear what I'd said. The cracks were there now. The golden child mask had slipped. And no matter how hard she tried to tape it back on, people knew. The following weeks were quiet. My sister stopped posting her career updates online. My parents didn't call, no texts, no invites. Honestly, I enjoyed the peace. Work was going strong. My manager started looping me in on long-term planning, and I even got a mention during a quarterly review. I kept my head down, stacking wins. While at home, the silence spoke louder than any words. Then right before Christmas, my phone lit up. Mom. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hi, honey. She started, her voice sugar sweet. We haven't heard from you in a while. Yeah, I said flatly. Funny how that works. There was a pause, then she sighed. Look, things have been difficult. Your sister's had a rough time at work. She might be losing her position. I didn't say anything. And your father's hours got cut. Money's tight right now. We were wondering if... No, I cut in silence on the other end. No, she repeated like she couldn't believe it. No, I said again. I'm not covering bills. I'm not fixing mistakes. I'm not bailing anyone out. I did that for years, and all I got was mocked. Remember that tag at dinner? Jobless and hopeless. That's what I was to you. That's all I was good for. A punchline and a wallet. She started sputtering. That was just a joke. You're taking it too. No, I snapped. You don't get to play that card anymore. I don't owe you anything. There was a long silence before she finally said coldly, "Fine." Then she hung up. A week later, Dad tried. Called me out of the blue, sounding oddly humble. "Son," he said, "I think we got off on the wrong foot. You've done well for yourself. Maybe we could sit down, talk things through. Family's supposed to stick together." I almost laughed. Family sticks together, huh? Where was that when I lost my job? When I was sending out resumes and eating cereal for dinner? Where was family then? He didn't answer, just muttered something about tough love. "Keep your tough love," I said. "I've got my own life now." Then I hung up. The begging didn't stop, though. My sister even texted me once late at night. "Hey, I know things got heated, but could you help me polish my resume? I think they're letting me go." I stared at the message for a long time. The same sister who'd smirked at me in front of relatives who'd labeled me jobless and hopeless was now asking me for help because she couldn't hold down her own job. I didn't reply, just deleted the text. By New Year's, it was clear the tables had fully turned. Relatives who used to gush over my sister started reaching out to me instead. A cousin messaged me asking for career advice. An uncle wanted me to look over some financial documents. People who'd ignored me at family dinners suddenly acted like I'd been important all along. But I didn't forget. The memory of that folding chair, the paper plate, the marker-scrolled tag that stuck with me. It wasn't just about being mocked. It was about being erased, written off by the very people I'd carried for years. And when they finally needed me again, I didn't owe them a damn thing. One night, Ryan and I were sitting in my apartment watching a game. He cracked open a bag of chips and said, "So you going to help them out eventually, or are you done for good?" I leaned back, smirking. They had their chance. They made their choice when they laughed. Now they can live with it. He nodded. Savage. I like it. And I laughed, but it wasn't out of cruelty. It was out of clarity. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the backup plan. The invisible one. The one covering the bills in the shadows. I was my own man, with my own career respected on my own merit. They could beg, plead, twist it however they wanted. But the truth was simple. I didn't need them anymore. And that's the thing about power. Once you realize you've had it all along, you never give it away.